is the only thing we have in common. My vice president actually endorses me. I had a great stretch since the State of the Union. Well, Donald has had a few tough days lately. You might call it stormy weather. What the hell?
Oh, President Biden making a few jokes. He really did hit in the room last night about his rivals, at his rivals' expense at last night's White House Correspondents' Dinner. The president, though, he also got serious, and he warned about the very real dangers of a second Trump term. We played that sound for you, and joining us now to discuss it all is Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida, who was in the room last night. Good to see you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Congressman, you know, I am very aware that most people are not following. They don't have the luxury of following all of this the way that we all do. We all, especially when we have young kids, you're a stepmommy. Like, you know, the TV is turned to Bluey. It's not turned to the Donald Trump trials most of the day. I do think, though, that the environment we now find ourselves in, even if you are not watching it minute to minute, there is a generalized sense that Trump is now in the court of law, that is his context. And whether or not you know the details of it, it puts him in that criminal light. And then Joe Biden is on the trail, is out there selling the accomplishments of his administration, and he's doing the work of being president of the United States. So even if you just know that top line, that already creates a pretty sharp contrast.
Yeah, and I think you can see that in just how the communications has changed over the last couple of months, both from the President Biden's standpoint and the campaign, and President Trump. President Trump's out there talking about how the courtroom is cold, super cold, right. You know, they're doing it on purpose, can't seem to get the temperature correct, right? Like, that's what he's talking about. And Biden's out there talking about what he's done for the country and what he's going to do. Like, I don't even know what Trump's agenda is for the future. He doesn't talk about that. He talks about himself and in the courtroom. And that, I think, is one of the things why you're seeing is now that the President Biden is messaging, right, I think you're seeing the polls starting to move.
So whether or not it's the criminal culpability that Trump's facing, whether it's a contrast of ideas, whether it's the economy going in the right direction, all the things that put the wind at Biden's sails right now, there is a rumbling out there that I don't think we've talked about a lot. There's a confidence among many. In fact, your colleague Jamie Raskin on a panel a week or two ago said Joe Biden's going to win this thing big. And you could see Jamie Harrison saying, like, Joe Biden's doing very well. But there's this thinking among a lot of Democrats. You got to work it. But that Joe Biden's actually going to win this race big. And it's kind of a contravention, certainly to some of the polls we've seen, but also just to the conventional wisdom that this is neck and neck. Where do you come down on forecasting November?
Well, look, I think Joe Biden is gonna win the race, right? But we shouldn't take anything for granted. We shouldn't look at Trump's troubles in the courtroom and think like this moment in time is where we're gonna be in September or October. So I think the Biden campaign is in full swing, right? They're raising the money, they're going out messaging, they're talking to the American people, they're talking about the accomplishments, they're talking about the real struggles, right? Like the price of food, the price of gas is still an issue. What are we gonna do about that? Rather than Trump just saying, here's the problem with no solution, Joe Biden's out there talking about the solutions. And so Democrats can be confident, but we got to put the work in.
Those are the managed expectations of a Florida Democrat.
Well, you know, I did serve in the minority my entire life in the legislature.
Let's follow up on Florida.
Yeah, please.
So 6-week abortion ban goes into effect maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. There's a ballot initiative about reproductive freedom that says no law can infringe on abortion services, pre-viability, or if the health of the mother is in question. However, Republicans continue to outpace Democrats in registration now by almost 1 million people.
Right.
Is Florida in play in November?
Well, I think it is in play because of the ballot initiatives. Make no mistake about it. Without those ballot initiatives, I don't think Florida's in play. I think Florida is now a red state. I mean, you're talking about 4 years ago, Democrats had about a 200,000, voter difference, more registered Democrats than Republicans. Now it's 900,000.
Yeah.
Right. And so Republicans have invested a ton of money. This is what happens when you're in the minority in the state in leadership for, 35 years. It has repercussions. They've gerrymandered the seats. And so they control everything, the House, the Senate, the whole cabinet. But they've made a mistake with the 6-week ban. I mean, they're to the right of Donald Trump. Right, on the 6-week ban, right? Like, who are they appealing to? The flat earthers? Like, I don't understand who that was for, the 6-week ban. So Florida and Arizona have a lot in common. as far as what their policy is towards women. And so, look, we hope that there's a big vote, but it's got to hit 60%. Right. For us to change, it's got to be at 67%. But what people in Florida need to understand is they have a choice. It's either 6 weeks, because the court said that was okay, unless they vote for the constitutional amendment. So this is Florida's chance, obviously, to get rid of a 6-week abortion ban, which is an all-out ban. Let's just be clear.
Yes, but 6 weeks is before most women even know that they are pregnant. And if I don't know I'm pregnant, how can I have a complication? And that has an exception. So the exceptions are really a word I'm not allowed to say on television because children are watching. I just really appreciate what you said about Democrats need to temper their expectations. Like, it's going to be, you think that Joe Biden's going to win, but people are going to have to work for it. I think that a lot of folks do not travel across the country and talk to real people. And if you travel across the country and talk to real people want to know what Joe Biden and Vice President Harris are going, what a next administration, another 4 years means for them. Real people across the country, they want to know what Speaker Hakeem Jeffries and Democrats holding the Senate means for them. And I think that Democrats have to do more of talking about that. The president and vice president, they make their pitch very well. I'm struggling to hear everybody else say what they need to be saying.
Well, look, you know this. You're in the messaging business, right? They got to go out. It's there for us. Mm-hmm. It is there for us to take. There's no question about that. But we got to go do that. We got to take it. We can't just sit back and say they're not going to vote for Donald Trump, right? We got to go out and we got to explain to people what we've done and what we're going to do. There are still, no matter the jobs numbers, no matter how inflation's coming down, and no matter how the American economy is better than any other country, we've had the best recovery since COVID than any other country, there are still people struggling, right? Food prices are still elevated. We got to talk about what we're going to do about that, right? The cost of living in Florida, the cost of insurance. We got to talk about these things.
Insurance is crazy.
If we do that, though, and we tell people what we've done and what we're going to do, right, to your point, not everyone's paying attention, right? They got all this incoming all day. If we message and we tell them, then we're going to win.
There's also this question of just sort of at a more macro level, like what kind of country do you want to live in? And what do you want the office of the presidency to be? And there was a moment last night, Colin Jost talking about his own grandfather and his grandfather having voted for President Biden that crystallized that. Take a listen.
My grandfather, a Staten Island firefighter, voted for you, Mr. President. He voted for you in the last election that he ever voted in. I mean, I'm sure someone else will vote twice in this election using his name, but that's just how the Democratic machine works. He voted for you, and the reason that he voted for you is because you're a decent man.
Let me just put a parenthetical in here, which is I worry in the age of disinformation that just gets clipped to be the thing about this is how the Democratic machine works. And there are people who don't understand that is satire. But putting that aside, the line he lands on, which is, OK, well, fundamentally, there are all of these policy issues you can decide upon. There are threats to democracy. There's extremism. Fundamentally, do you want someone decent or indecent leading this country?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden is a decent man. He's a family man. His story is, it's tragedy. It's triumph over tragedy. I mean, it's just his arc is really an unbelievable story that is kind of lost in this moment with everything. But I think when people write about it 15, 20, 30 years from now, and they look at Joe Biden dedicating his entire life to service and really stepping up when the country needed someone like that most, both 4 years ago and again now. Right, where we're at this pivotal moment. I mean, there's just, democracy's on the ballot. We say it all the time. It's like people are like so overhearing it, or this is the most important election of your lifetime, right? People are overhearing it. But if Democrats go out and tell people, right, and explain what when we say democracy, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. What is going to change if it goes the opposite direction? What are you going to lose, right? What do you have now that you're taking for granted that you won't have? Right, we have to make it granular. We have to explain how that's going to affect someone in their everyday life rather than the top line. Democracy is on the ballot. But Joe Biden is a decent man. I mean, think about where we're at right now in the election, right? one of the potential vice presidential candidates, right, that was on the short list, top 3 or 4, was playing Dr. Kevorkian with her puppy, right? Like, that's what is.
She shot the dog and the goat.
Right. Like, this is what is going on that side of the aisle. She's trying to own the libs because she's putting in her book. It didn't leak. Like, we found out about it. She was going to trumpet the fact. She was like, yeah, my dog barked. I killed him. Right. That's what's going on right now in the vice presidential search amongst Donald Trump. Like, decency is on the ballot.